Well, bakers, the cookie recipe that I'm about to show you is truly a 5-star recipe. I used to work in a Michelin star restaurant in San Francisco, and this is where the recipe came from. So don't tell anybody, it'll be our little secret. These cookies are insane. Imagine if a cookie met the most delicious brownie and had a cookie brownie baby. They are so yummy. You're definitely going to want to make these. For this cookie, we're going to start out with some bittersweet chocolate. I love to use chopped up bittersweet chocolate, something around 72%. It's what gives these cookies just their quality and the really good chocolate intensity. So what you want to do the first thing is to pop this into the microwave or do it over a pot of water. You want to melt it gently. So we do our melted chocolate step first because we want it to cool down while we get to the other ingredients so that it's a good temperature for when we get to it. So here I have a nice big bowl, and into this I'm going to add in my softened butter. When I'm baking and the recipe calls for room temperature butter or softened butter, I leave it out overnight. You just want it to be really lovely and soft, especially when you're making cookies like these. So now I'm going to cream this together with a hand mixer, because this is what I did as a child. I used to make so many cookies when I was a young child, and I always did them using my mom's hand mixer. However, this recipe is so simple, you can actually do it using a wooden spoon and bowl. And that is totally fine too. Just like in my first cookbook, I have this recipe and I make it all by hand. So to the butter, we're going to add in some white sugar, and my favorite ingredient when making rich, chewy cookies is dark brown sugar. Now, dark brown sugar is a fantastic ingredient in these types of cookies because it not only gives you a lovely caramel, almost like molasses flavor to your cookie, it also adds moisture. And the thing about this cookie is that it's a doughy cookie, it's a gooey cookie, and you know, the moisture from the brown sugar helps with that. So when I worked in that restaurant in San Francisco, I cooked off these cookies every single day, probably around 25, 30 cookies a day, and I worked there for like over a year. And I just knew how amazing they were. So much so is that I wouldn't allow myself to eat them because I knew once I started, I would not stop. So on my last day working there, I literally had 3 cookies. I went all out, I didn't care, and I just went for it. And oh my gosh, they were just so insane. It was worth the wait. And I honestly am glad that I didn't indulge earlier. Otherwise I would have been in trouble. Do you want to cream this mixture until it kind of looks like this? You know, around 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes on high speed. And then into this, we are going to add in that cooled, melted, bittersweet chocolate. Look at that. The reason it has to be cooled is that it can't hit that butter and sugar mixture hot. So you want to have this cooled before you add it. The next ingredient we're going to add after the chocolate is the molasses, which is also known as treacle. Now, if you do not have molasses in your country or even in your house, you can make it easily. And I've got a recipe on biggerbolderbaking.com. It's a fantastic substitute. What molasses adds is extra moisture, but then also it adds lovely flavor, and it really complements that brown sugar. It gives you this kind of like hickory flavor. Now you want to mix those ingredients well together. Once that chocolate goes in, you want to give it a mix because you don't want the chocolate to harden and set on top of the sugar and butter. Into this, we are going to add some room temperature eggs. Really important to have room temperature eggs because they combine in so much better to the rest of your ingredients. Now, if you think to yourself, I'm not a fan of bittersweet chocolate, I'm going to use milk chocolate in these cookies for the base. I don't recommend that. I will tell you, the cookies do not end up being bitter. They're lovely and rich and deep with chocolate flavor, but it really mellows out because of the sugar and the butter and everything else. Look at this, how gorgeous is that? That's the base of our cookie. Really lovely. We're going to move on to the next step. I'm going to sift over the dry ingredients. So here I have some all-purpose flour, unsweetened cocoa powder, some salt, and baking soda. Now, the reason I'm sifting, and you don't normally see me sift because I've become kind of a lazy baker, is I want to get any lumps out of that cocoa powder. It also lightens up and aerates the dough. Now I'm going to go in with my beater again. Just mix that together until the dough forms. And then the last thing we're going to add to this is chopped milk chocolate. Now these are triple chocolate cookies. So we have the melted chocolate in the base, we have the cocoa powder, and then we have milk chocolate chips throughout the dough. If you would like to use bittersweet chocolate instead, that is totally fine. But I kind of liked the balance of the dark and the little bit milky. It's just a really nice kind of complement to each other. So we're going to add those in there. So 9 times out of 10, when I'm making my cookies, I take a chocolate bar, I chop it up, and those are my chocolate chips. I like to use chocolate bar. I don't like to use chocolate chips, only in some situations. Chocolate bars, they pool the chocolate. It kind of spreads everywhere. You can get it nice and fine. And you can get also, you can choose what grade of chocolate you want, like what quality you want. With chocolate chips, it's not always the case. And the chocolate doesn't pool, they stay in one shape. So all you want to do is just stir in your chocolate. So that is our dough, super simple. So now here's my baker's secret. You want to chill this dough until it's scoopable. So you're talking around an hour to 2 hours because it is quite a soft dough. But what I like to do is leave it in the fridge for 3 or 4 days. And during this time, the flavor develops, you get much better texture in your cookie, and you get that lovely, even more pronounced crinkle on top. It really makes a difference. So I really encourage you, if you have the time, to do the same. For right now, I'm just going to cover this over and pop it in the fridge. So once your dough has chilled, it is time to scoop. It's much easier to scoop when it's chilled. For each cookie, I like to do what we call a heaped tablespoon, which means the same amount on top as underneath, which ends up being 2 tablespoons. So a 2 tablespoon scoop, just like that. This is a pretty big dough. You're going to get around 28 cookies. So just a little trick that I have learned since being a mom is that I always have cookie dough in my freezer. So now anytime that we do a get together, we have to go to somebody's house and I offer to bring something. If people come over here for dinner, whatever it is, you're getting cookies. And cookie dough freezes beautifully. So don't ever be afraid to do that. And it will last in your freezer. I usually say 8 weeks, but honestly, it'll last longer. For right now, I'm just going to cook off 12. And I'm going to save the rest of my dough for another day. That's it. If you want to get fancy and get that real bakery style look, you can always stick some extra chocolate on top of the cookie dough. So when it melts, you're guaranteed chocolate on top. Okay, I'm done with my spiel. Let's get these guys into the oven. So bake your cookies at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees Celsius for only 8 to 10 minutes. I say only because if you overbake them, they won't be gooey and soft in the middle. My preference is to bake 1 tray at a time to get the best results. Our cookies look gorgeous and they smell amazing. But here's one thing I always do when my cookies come out of the oven: pan bang. Bang them on your countertop. And what it does, if you look, it settles the cookie. It creates even more crinkle. And it just really makes all that chocolate pool. And this is why I don't use chocolate chips. You see the way that the milk chocolate on top is kind of spread out and pooling? That's the benefit of a chocolate bar and a pan bang. I can tell you with certainty that these cookies taste as good as they look. They look fantastic on the top. They've got that classic crinkle. They look like they just came straight out of a professional bakery, which they did. By adding the melted chocolate into this dough gives us that lovely brownie-like texture. And with the addition of the dark brown sugar and the molasses, it just enhances the flavor of these cookies. And baking the cookie at a high temperature for a short amount of time ensures that you get that soft, gooey center that we all love. If you are one of the millions of people on earth who love cookies and brownies, then you've landed on the right video. I really hope you enjoy this recipe and get comfy. I've got lots more recipes for you to check out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you back here again really soon.